have a small but a very special moment to share. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Wikipedia. A remarkable milestone in the global journey of free knowledge and open information. To commemorate this historic occasion, we warmly invite the members of Wikipedians of Kerala Users Group to join Jimmy Wells and Barkha Dutt on stage for a brief cake-cutting ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together as we celebrate 25 years of Wikipedia and its incredible contribution to the world. Thank you.
Okay, first let's have a big round of applause for the 25-year birthday of Wikipedia. Before I start my conversation with Jimmy, I just want to do a huge shout out for the people of Calicut and Kozhikode and the Kerala Lit Fest. Jimmy and I just came here by boat, which is our first time ever attending a Lit Fest in this way, because we were told there were so many people that there was no other way to get to the venue. So an amazing start to this literature festival. Before our conversation starts, I want a quick show of hands. How many of you in the last 1 month have used Wikipedia to look up something? Keep your hands up so I can see if that's a 100% score. Is it a 100% score?
Yes.
Can we hear it louder for Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Let me now give you the data, and this is data which is official from the Pew Research Center. In the past decade alone, Wikipedia articles have been viewed a total of 1.9 trillion times. That's about 508 million views per day. On average, every second Wikipedia is edited about 5.7 times every second. So extraordinary.
It's amazing.
Well done. 25 years. Yeah. How does it feel?
Wow, it's an amazing...
Can you hold the mic up?
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to think about. 25 years ago, I just typed hello world and hit save, and that was the very beginning of Wikipedia. And woo! And I didn't realize how young I was then, but now I realize it's been a while. But it's been fantastic, and we've seen growth all around the world as people, this idea of a free encyclopedia for everyone, really it means something to people. It feels like really important and really worth doing, and particularly in an era that's full of a lot of angry social media and a lot of noise and all this. Wikipedia tries to be a little bit calmer place and a little bit, nicer place. So you just saw up here, these are very typical. These are Wikipedia volunteers who came with the cake. I've met a few of them in the past, but not all of them. And this is the kind of people. They love to share knowledge. They love to work together, collaborate. And there's people like this all around the world.
Tell me this. Your launch of Wikipedia coincided actually with a difficult phase in your own life. Your daughter was very ill.
Yes.
And at that time, you didn't know or you didn't think of this sort of community-led fount of knowledge. And you were looking up all these expert-led sort of portals of information to find maybe a way of treating her. Can you talk about your experience? Because if I'm not wrong, Wikipedia is 25, but so is your daughter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And his daughter was going through a particularly hard medical crisis and then thankfully emerged from that.
Yeah, I had been working on the predecessor project, which was called Newpedia. It was, as you say, expert-led, very top-down, 7-stage review process to get anything published. It was also not successful at all. It wasn't very fun. It was too serious and not interesting for people. And when my daughter was born, she was in the hospital. She was very ill. And I had been thinking, maybe I have to, give up at some point. Like, that's not working.
Yeah.
But we had the idea, one of my employees had brought me the idea of saying, oh, have you seen Wiki? Oh, well, no, what's Wiki? Wiki is just a website anyone can edit. It's a very easy, open system. And I realized, wow, this 7-stage review process, no one's having fun, no one's enjoying it.
Yeah.
So when I came home from the hospital, with the little baby who was now getting better, I realized, you know what, this is really important because, when I was in the hospital, I was searching online for information, and it was either very hard academic information, which I didn't, I wasn't qualified to read, or like random blog posts or something. And I said, we need a general encyclopedia for people. And so then decided, okay, let's just try it. Let's just try Wikipedia, and installed some software, and we got started. And we already had a good community. We were a few hundred people who were interested, but nobody was getting any work done because the system wasn't good. And suddenly we had more work done in 2 weeks than in almost 2 years, so it was exciting.
And the word wiki is a Hawaiian word.
Yeah.
Anybody knows what wiki means? Anyone wants to guess? Don't quickly look up Wikipedia to see what wiki means, which I know is what most of you are doing, right? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so it comes from a Hawaiian word, wiki, which means quick.
Yeah.
So the idea is quick collaboration. And so the idea of a wiki is it's very easy to come and click edit and start editing. And in the early days, there were two things about it. One, it was really fun because you could be the first person to maybe type Paris is a city in France and hit save. Oh, wow, look at my amazing thing. It was very simple. But also, it was a little scary because it was so open and so easy for people to contribute. I didn't know, will people come and destroy it? Will it be a mess and so forth? And obviously, we had to learn as we went and had to add controls and things like this over time. But it's still very, very open even today.
In the age of Trump, it is no coincidence that most tech barons are billionaires, are filled with machismo, and a lot of the digital spaces are filled with toxicity. I have seen more than one headline calling you the last of the nice guys, the last, or perhaps the only nice tech baron. You chose to keep Wikipedia free from advertisements. You have not commercialized it for profit. What sort of saint are you?
Well, the thing about Wikipedia is we are a charity, so we're a nonprofit organization. Yeah. And I like it that way. I think in the future, when people look back on this era, they'll say, wow, it was a lot of toxicity, a lot of political crisis, a lot of problems in the world. But this Wikipedia, they were really nice people, and they were just giving a gift to the world. I'm really proud to be a part of that. I also have my for-profit company, Fandom, which does very well, and I've written a book, so maybe I'll make some money from that. But I always say, I live in London, and the number of bankers in London who make far more money than I ever will is, a lot of them. But I wouldn't trade my life for theirs for 1 second. They don't get to come and arrive at a book festival by boat. And I travel the world. I meet the Wikipedians. I meet anybody I want to meet. I have a really fantastic and interesting life, and that's really, for me, what life is about.
But why did you consciously decide to keep Wikipedia not for profit? Why did you consciously decide to keep it free from advertisements? Wikipedia functions, as most of you know, on donations and grants. And, oftentimes when people are building up companies, the reason to keep them for profit is the idea of scale. Wikipedia has demonstrated with the data and the statistics I just shared that scale is possible without this for-profit model. But I want to know why you consciously thought of it that way.
Sure, yeah. Well, so Wikipedia, when it first started, it was just a project. And then after some time, it was beginning to grow. And okay, we have to figure out exactly what we're doing here. And that was deep in the dot-com crash. So there was no way to raise money. But also, I think there's something really interesting about how did we get to scale. If I had been able to raise money and it was for profit, probably if you have some trouble on the website, you think, oh, I just need to hire a lot of moderators. And we've just gotten, an investment, so we can just hire a lot of moderators. And that would have prevented us from creating all the democratic structures in the community and to really figure out, okay, how can we do this as a community? Because we would have just poured money at the problems and we would have ended up like all the other social platforms with mysterious rules behind the scenes and no openness and so on. And so it's both, like Wikipedia became more successful because it was a nonprofit as well. Because also the volunteers, like people really pour their heart into Wikipedia. and they don't do it, it's a different motivation. So people also pour their heart into their Instagram or whatever, but often they're influencers. They're trying to make money, they're trying to be famous and so forth. The Wikipedians are not trying to be famous. They're just trying to meet a bunch of other fun nerds and have fun writing an encyclopedia.
You know, as a journalist now for 30 years, I often say media and journalism and content in general, we have battled what I call three tyrannies. One is the tyranny of excessive state control. The other is the tyranny of the market. Both of these tyrannies around the world are often debated. The tyranny that is not spoken about that often is the tyranny of the algorithm. The algorithm, for anyone who is, you know, I moved from television to digital and I've experienced this firsthand. The internet actually loves polarization. It encourages, the algorithm actually encourages toxicity, hate, extremes.
Exactly.
You have often said that one of the priorities for Wikipedia is to remain facts-focused, neutral, objective, even when somebody editing the piece may have a slant or a view.
Yeah.
Could you explain how Wikipedia remains neutral in an environment that actually rewards extremes?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting, and I agree completely with your analysis. You know, we see, first of all, the business model for journalism has been under huge pressure for a long time now. And where we see this most sharply, unfortunately, is local news. Local is really collapsed around the world, and that's a problem for society and so forth. But also the problem is chasing clicks and getting clicks in an environment where the media, the social algorithms promote the toxicity and the anger and attention seeking and so forth. So even quality news outlets struggle to say, oh, well, you know, we ran one story, it had a slightly inflammatory headline. Oh, but it got a lot of traffic. And we don't really like to run that kind of headline, but this is hard, you know.
Also because you can see how it's doing or not doing in real time, and it's like a mind game.
Yeah, exactly. And so with Wikipedia, you know, I think there is still, I mean, the popularity of Wikipedia suggests to me there's still strong demand for things that aren't clickbait, that aren't outrage, that are trying to be neutral. And of course, being neutral is hard, and we don't always get it exactly right. But we have a commitment, like our community values the idea of neutrality. And so, you know, what we'll see is people trying to set aside their own personal political opinions as best they can. Well, and of course, good journalists know about this, right? You want to say, okay, well, I have my private view, but I need to cover the whole story and explain who's saying what and trying to be neutral. And of course, you know, with journalism and news, sometimes we get it better than others, and that's just the way things go. And that's really it. And so I think it's partly because we don't use algorithms at all. Like we don't internally, you know, you just write, you know, if you want to say, oh, what's the title of the article on, I don't know,
Kerala Lit Fest.
Kerala Lit Fest. It would be called Kerala Lit Fest. That will be the name of the article. You know, those are the simple things. And that's what we prefer. But it does draw a lot of traffic, but not that clickbaity traffic. It's just more people being more thoughtful and wanting to learn something and wanting to think.
Jimmy has a book out called The 7 Rules of Trust. And one of the things I've heard you say again and again, and I found it very compelling as a journalist in this environment, trying to remain facts-driven, is that you said even when your content goes against the leaning of your audience, it doesn't encourage trust.
Yes.
But even when your content coincides all the time with your audience or your viewer or your reader doesn't trust you.
Yeah.
They recognize you for being a partisan.
Yes, exactly.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I have my own personal example. So I love electric cars. I'm excited about the electric transition and so forth. I own an electric car, not a Tesla. And I live in London. And so 2 quality newspapers of London are The Guardian and The Telegraph. And The Guardian is center-left, Telegraph center-right. And The Guardian loves electric cars, and The Telegraph hates electric cars. So I always say, like, if you just show me just the headline for the last week of every article about electric cars, I bet I can sort them 90%.
And that makes you trust neither fully.
And neither fully. So sometimes I prefer The Guardian's, like what they're reporting, but also I'm not a rabid partisan. I like electric cars, and I think they're going to be a huge benefit. But,
Yeah.
there are things like electric cars are heavier, so the tires wear down faster. So the particles from the tires are in the air more. There's some more air pollution. Okay, is that a serious problem? It might be. I don't know. I'm not here to campaign one way or the other.
Yeah.
I just want to know. So I remember once when this really struck me, I saw a scientific report had come out about electric cars. Both newspapers reported on it. One reported, fantastic, electric car's great. The other one said, oh, report shows electric car's terrible. I'm like, you're talking about the same report. And so even though I prefer one coincides with my views, I trust it less. And actually the data shows this. Where we talk about this in the book is in the US, newspapers endorsing political candidates. It turns out that it reduces trust even with people who agree with the endorsement, because you say, oh, well, I agree with your endorsement. That's who I'm going to vote for. But does this mean that everything you're reporting is going to be slanted? Because I actually, even though I support one side, I still want the full story. I want to understand. I want to be able to respond. If my friend says, oh, but your person this, I don't want to be in the dark about something negative about my candidate. I think most adults are pretty sensible like that. You just don't see it in social media where people are encouraged to take one side and campaign.
And then be in your echo chambers and actually have your minds shrink.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I've always said, if I went onto a social media platform and they said, oh, they had a banner at the top saying, we have a new option, you can turn it on. We're going to show you things we think you'll disagree with, but that we think we have signals of quality. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I want to read something, I don't agree with this, but wow, I have to think about it because that's it. And I think, really, at a lit fest, that's exactly what the kind of people, you're reading books. You don't always choose a book to read because you think, oh, I'm going to agree with this book. Maybe you like a book that you agree with, but also you're like, okay, this book is, people say it's great, but I'm sure I disagree, but I better read it. I'll find it interesting to challenge myself, and I'll learn something, and I'll grow a little bit.
Now, since you've mentioned electric cars and clarified that you don't own a Tesla, I do have to ask you about Elon Musk, whom you've said he's privately friendlier than his public persona suggests.
Yeah.
But in public, he's been targeting Wikipedia. He's called it Wokipedia, Dickipedia.
Yeah.
He says it's controlled by the far left. Does any of that bother you? Does it get to you? Are they out to get Wikipedia?
Yeah, I mean, so largely it doesn't because, I know the Wikipedians and I travel and I meet people and they're mostly not particularly political. I mean, everybody has some political views or whatever. And if you think Wikipedia has been hijacked by one faction, this isn't true. At the same time, I would say, okay, anytime there's a challenge that says, oh, okay, hold on, Wikipedia is biased on this, I think what we have to do is to say, okay, well, let's think about that. Let's make sure, are we citing only one side of the story? Do we put emphasis in places where we shouldn't? Should we do this? And sometimes I look at it and I say, nope, actually, we're fine. Other times I say, oh, actually, I think we could do better here. And I think if Wikipedia ever loses that spirit, then we will become biased, right? You have to take any criticism and at least chew on it. And I think it's the same for journalism. Like right now in the UK, the BBC is going through a little bit of a crisis of confidence and a crisis. They had a story that was very biased and,
the story on Trump.
Yeah, story on Trump.
Which was edited to join two different bits, just for the audience.
Yeah.
It was edited to join two different bits of Trump's speech, and one part of it took place actually 50 minutes later, and they patched it together, and it looked like...
It looked different,
Yes, and Trump is threatening to sue them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trump is Trump, so I don't know.
We'll come to Trump.
But,
we'll come to Trump.
But, in my view, that was bad. It wasn't good journalism. It was a big mistake. I don't think it shows the BBC's been hijacked by the woke left, but it does mean they should say, okay, whoa, hold on. We did put something out that it doesn't live up to our standards. I think this is what they've said.
Yeah.
And they need to examine and say, okay, how do we do better? What do we do to get better on this? Because the BBC should be trusted. And you can't be trusted even if you, like me, if you really dislike Trump, I still, what I said is, you don't actually have to patch together things he says to make him look bad. Just print what he says. That's enough. That's fine. So, yeah.
The facts speak for themselves.
The facts speaks for themselves, exactly. Yeah.
So let's come to Trump. I was reading in the same Pew Research article on Wikipedia that one of the most read pages is the one on Donald Trump. And whether you love him or hate him, there's a great deal of interest because, you know, he would be hilarious if he weren't so consequential by virtue of being the American president. His craziness has very real, sometimes tragic, sometimes grave consequences. He's also not very big on facts, and he just makes up things. So, for example, he just this week said his ratings were so high he's considering a fourth term, and his ratings are actually at an all-time low, just as an example. Now, how do you deal, because you, whether it's Wikipedia or your entire research in building trust, how do you deal with what's often called a Trumpian age, a post-truth age?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing because it's been very rare to have a leader who is so openly not interested in facts and who sort of says things wrong, and his supporters kind of don't care. And I think that's both a cause of some of the decline in trust, but also it's a symptom of some of the decline in trust. If you ask a Trump supporter, does it bother you that he lies? And they don't say, oh, he doesn't lie. Nobody thinks he doesn't lie. They just say, well, they all lie. Like, it's just Trump. He's a character. He says things, you know, and they just don't mind it because they think all politicians are criminals and so forth. Well, that's unfortunate. That's really sad. You know, I think it's really fantastic when you look and you can find like, oh, here's an election, and there are 3 candidates, and they all seem like proper people. They're all kind of interesting, and they disagree. Maybe I like this one's policies better. That's good. This one would be okay. That one I'm really against, but I don't think they're a crazy person or whatever. That's the best kind of election, you know, to say serious, thoughtful people, because that's what we need in leaders is actual leadership. And, you know, I think we'll come back to that. I mean, I think these things go in waves, trends back and forth.
How do you explain the fact, and this is for all of you out there, that every time I speak at an event and I ask about either media or politics, everybody uniformly says that they have lost faith or they have lost trust in institutions that they once counted on. And yet, that doesn't stop people from consuming either journalism that is patently slanted or theatrical, or even voting for politicians. As you just mentioned, Trump's own voters, they indulge his spin or his fiction. How do you explain this paradox? Is it that politics and journalism have both become theater, and people kind of look at them as entertainment and not institutions or pillars of democracy that are going to change the lives of ordinary people?
I think that's exactly it. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think it's something that I think we need to think about how to change. I think, you know, we need to think about how do we rebuild trustworthy institutions? What are the things that organizations can do to begin to build trust? You know, one of the things that's interesting, the Edelman Trust Barometer survey is an annual survey, many countries around the world, asking lots and lots of questions about trust. And what's interesting is how many people, one of the few bright spots of trust for many people is they will say, my own employer is someone I trust. And I think that's interesting because a lot of people don't like their employer and don't like their job, but they trust in some sense. I think that's because of a bit more of a personal connection, like you know your employer and so forth, so you can sort of see, okay, well, we know in our company we're trying to do the right thing. And so, you know, I think it's crucial to society because, you know, one of the things, again, in the most recent Trust Barometer survey, as people move from low trust, they begin to move in a direction of considering violence and considering, you know, if you can't talk to the other side, if you think, oh, anybody who voted for the politician I didn't is basically a dangerous person who's completely crazy, which many of our politicians these days, in the US anyway, act that way. It's like, wow, hold on a minute. Like, that's really unfortunate. And people need to stop and think like, oh, actually, you know, I disagree with how you voted, but I also think probably you're a decent person. And let's have a conversation about that. Like, let's get back to that kind of world with not perfect unity and everybody agrees, but where we have like human respect for each other, I think is super important.
Now, this panel is called The Future of Knowledge. And I don't know how many of you know, but Jimmy, your mother was a school teacher.
Yes.
And so knowledge and imparting of knowledge was an early part of your life, growing up in Alabama in the United States of America. But at that time, people read books, and you consumed your information on a non-digital platform.
Yeah.
Now, it seems that as knowledge and information has moved to our phones, our tablets, our computers, we are both smarter and less smart simultaneously.
Yes, that's right.
My question to you is, where do you get your information and research from? Do you use Wikipedia for your own research?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Do you cross-verify what you research on Wikipedia?
Yeah.
And what else do you use that you trust?
Yeah, what I always say is like Wikipedia is a great starting point, but not an ending point, depending on what you're doing. Like if I just want to know, some basic facts. I'm going to Kerala. I want to remember a few things about Kerala. I don't need a deep research. But if it's something more important, then I go to Wikipedia, I get the start there, and then I find the sources and I check the sources. And hopefully if I see something in the sources that, oh, that's not what Wikipedia said, then maybe I go back and leave a note, or maybe I make an edit and say, oh, I need to correct something. And then I read a wide variety of news outlets and news sources.
In physical form?
In digital.
Digital.
Yeah. I do still love a Sunday newspaper, a paper,
The long,
and actually,
the long read.
One of the things I like about an old-fashioned paper newspaper, and I think of this is going to be a funny way to talk, but like the algorithm of a newspaper is everything is in order and it's kind of random, and you flick through and you see and you read something that you didn't think to look for, and it's that serendipity. And actually one of the things I do, I use Google News to find news headlines, but every now and then I log out and I clear my cookies, because if you don't, it starts to show you
the same thing over
more
and
of
over
things
again.
that it knows you're interested in. So like I get way too many stories about the royal family in the UK. Am I interested in the royal family? Well, probably the algorithm would say yes. My more thoughtful brain says, not really, but I do click on those headlines sometimes, and then it remembers that and it shows me more, and I'm like, no, I don't really want more.
That's really interesting.
And so it's interesting. So if you can just clear your cookies sometimes, then you go back to like, oh, this is random. And I love getting random information. I love, seeing something new. To me, I'm a very curious person, and that's quite good. And I think there can be a balance there. Of course, sometimes if I'm researching something, then I do like to see more stories about that because I'm trying to learn about something. But that's a balance. And then, of course, books. Books are still very important. I do read books, and
do you read them on Kindle, or do you read them on audiobooks, or do you read them?
I mainly do Kindle more than anything else because I travel a lot and it's easier than carrying paper books. But I also, again, I love a paper book. I think, every summer I take a holiday and we go to the beach. I don't like going to a beach.
I mean, we just brought you by boat to a beach.
I love it. No, what I don't like is laying on a beach in the sun under an umbrella. It's very boring.
Yes.
I love to see. I love going on a boat, so that was perfect. But if I have to do that, I want a paper book because you don't want sand and water in your device or whatever. And I love the paper, and I think it's fantastic. And actually, one of the interesting statistics, I was just reading this about the amount of reading. So the number of people who are saying they read a book in the last year is getting smaller, and that's a bad trend. The number of books being sold is getting higher. So it means fewer people are reading more books, and that's an interesting trend. I don't think it's a great trend. If only some segment of society is still reading books and others are not. I don't know what to make of that. And then one other thing I want to say is about young people, because oftentimes people are very concerned the younger generation are not reading books. Okay, yeah, that's a concern. And then they say, oh, they just look at their TikTok videos and very short attention spans. And I say, yeah, but when we were teenagers, I was an idiot too, and we had very short attention spans. And guess what? That's the same generation. They not only watch a lot of short form video, they also binge really long and really complicated TV shows and podcasts. Podcasts are very popular with young people.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they also have a hunger for rich, long-form content.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not reading as many books, but they probably are reading long-read journalism and things like this, and Substacks or whatever. So I'm hopeful about the future and about young people. And I think it's interesting, and I think it would be a tragedy if people stopped reading books altogether, because sometimes a book, people have space in a book to make a full, complete argument and a full, complete story, and you really can come to understand better than an 800-word sort of op-ed, I could write a short op-ed about trust, it would be great. People would say, "Oh, yeah, that's good." But if they read a whole book, they're like, "Okay, but what does he really think? And what about this objection and that objection?" Maybe, hopefully, I covered a few of those, and then people come away. Maybe they don't agree with me, but at least they come away saying, "Oh, okay, but now we can have a better conversation."
But there's one real concern, which is retention and what aggregated searches and now ChatGPT and OpenAI are doing to the brain. And I'll give you a small example. My father could recite a telephone directory just from memory.
Wow, yeah.
And I call names. Because I call names, I don't remember phone numbers, because
That's
I think
right.
we're
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
dialing names and the number automatically dials. Now, my question is, and it's related to artificial intelligence, one, there is an assumption that the OpenAI kind of generative AI platforms are going to come up and swallow Wikipedia. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so I don't think so, because I think it's a different kind of thing, but it's obviously something we have to watch very carefully to think about, okay, what does the future of knowledge look like in an age of AI? What is that activity like? So one of the issues right now is that the large language models hallucinate a lot, and they get things wrong a lot. And one of the problems is they get things wrong, but they make things up that sound plausible because of the way they're designed to predict the next most likely word. It usually ends up sounding plausible, even if it's completely wrong. And that's actually more dangerous than if they just said crazy things. Because if it, one of my favorite...
Crazy things would be obviously wrong.
Exactly, they would be obviously wrong. So one of my tests, I try a lot of different models. I run local models on my laptop, and I try all the ones commercially. And one of the things I love to do is I ask, who is Kate Garvey, my wife? And she's not a famous person, but she's known some. She worked in number 10 Downing Street for 10 years. She's been in the media a little bit, but not a famous person. So she's kind of perfect for an AI to think it knows who she is, but to get it wrong. And it says, she started a charity with this person or that person. Well, she started a charity, but not with those people, and a different topic and so on. But then my favorite is I always ask, and who did she marry? It's never me, but it's people we know. We live in London. It's people in politics. It's political journalists. It's in that sense a little bit plausible.
Yeah.
And so, this is for us when we're in Wikipedia and we're trying to use AI to see could it be helpful to us. Mostly no, because it's so bad at facts. But we do think there's some things like AI could help us in certain things. I mean, we think of AI with like ChatGPT and so forth, but there's also machine translation has gotten a lot better. It's still not perfect, so we don't like to see people using it kind of blindly. But of course, it's helpful. It's helpful for people if they say, "Oh, I want to, put more content in my language, and if I can use other resources." Of course, this is great. That's getting better to break down the knowledge silos in society and so forth. And then when we look at the traffic, right? So we've seen about an 8% drop in human traffic in the last year. So 8% is important. Like that's meaningful. It's not a collapse. Somebody said, "Oh, well, people are going to Wikipedia only 1/4 as much as they used to." I'm like, no, it's not 1/4. It's maybe a little bit less. And what does that mean? Well, we're not sure, because some of that is, so there was a Pew research study, so it's official, I think that's what you said, that looked at the Google search results. And so the top 10 links, the traditional links, Wikipedia's on the first page for 3% of all searches. But Wikipedia is linked in 6% of all AI summaries, so twice as many links, but people click through a lot less because the AI summary often is the question you had. So I always call it the Tom Cruise, how old is Tom Cruise problem. 20 years ago, if you typed, how old is Tom Cruise, Google didn't know, but it just linked to Wikipedia. Now Google knows, but it does say source Wikipedia, and so people don't have to come through to Wikipedia. So that's not such a big deal, partly because we're not advertising driven, so we don't obsess about page views. I think if we were pure advertising driven, an 8% drop would be 8% drop in revenue. That would be, we would be really having emergency meetings and so forth. As it is, we're like, ooh, that doesn't sound great, but okay, but what does it really mean? Because our business model is really, we're a charity, and the vast majority of the money, the average donation to Wikipedia is like $10. So we're not funded by governments, we're not funded by a handful of billionaires, we're funded by people like this in the audience who say, oh, I use Wikipedia all the time. I've got a little money. I'll chip in a little bit. And if they know the information comes from Wikipedia, then they're still likely to give. If they've forgotten that Wikipedia is what all the large language models are using for knowledge, then that does become a problem. But also, it's not just about the money donations, it's also about participation. Because we're always saying, we want kind and thoughtful people, whatever your background, whatever your ideas are, the most important thing is kind and thoughtful, to come to Wikipedia and say, oh, let's have a conversation. Come and join us. And come. If you think Wikipedia is Wokepedia and biased, don't assume we're going to be angry when you come in. Assume that we want to be better. And so come and help us and so forth. But be kind and be thoughtful and don't accuse us of things. And we just need more people editing Wikipedia.
Yeah, before I open for questions, a last question from me. The New York Times and some other newspapers have actually sued OpenAI because they say that basically what ChatGPT does is troll their information that their teams have worked to basically collate or report, and then is passing it off as their own. And, you know, I'm just wondering where Wikipedia weighs in on that debate.
Yeah. So we're unusual because everything in Wikipedia is freely licensed, like open source software.
Yeah.
So you're free to take it, copy, modify, redistribute, all of that, commercially, non-commercially. The only thing we really ask for is attribution, and the large language models are quite bad at attribution, so that's a problem. But we're very different from a traditional publisher that relies on copyright and so forth. It was a funny thing. I personally read the audiobook for my book, which I really enjoyed. It was a fun process. It was the first time I had read the book out loud, and it was like, oh, this is really interesting to do. But at the end, they had in the script, they had this thing I was supposed to read that said, I expressly forbid AI from training on this document, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, what do I think of that? I was like, well, okay, I'll do that because I wrote the book. It's under copyright. You know, it's a commercial. I mean, it's not that commercial. It's just a book. But the point is, I get it. Like if you are a news service and we know we have to save the business model for journalism, or we're really in trouble, right? The whole world is really in trouble because then we don't have facts. Democracies depend on that flow of honest information. It's really crucial. And so I sort of say, okay, yeah, actually it's very interesting. But there's a lot of nuance in the law and how it works because you can't copyright facts, and I don't think you should be able to copyright facts. That's also a very bad thing. So I think we're going to see a really interesting unfolding of sort of a new social contract around that sort of thing. And I think it's too early to know how it's going to go, but I'm like everybody, I'm watching it very interestedly.
And you've said you're fascinated by AI both for how good it is and how bad it is. On the bad side is obviously it's not always fact friendly. For me, another bad is that I can actually tell when somebody has written me an email using ChatGPT because the language is very standardized. So I fear that it's killing individual creativity or individual authenticity. But what's on the good side? What is exciting you?
I mean, on that bad side, I have my email client now suggests responses. And 2 or 3 times I clicked it, and I'm like, oh, my friend is going to be really angry. It's like, yes, thanks. Thanks, I'll think about your idea. I'm like, what is that? That doesn't even sound like me. It's a ridiculous thing. It's very polite and weird. So I think, one of the things that is really great, I love to cook. I fancy myself a great cook. In fact, when I got here, they gave me a bunch of spices from Kerala. I'm like, this is fantastic. You have no idea what a great gift this is for me. I'm going to go home and really start learning about Kerala cuisine. But I love to cook, and so it's actually pretty good at suggesting recipes, although I always say only do this if you already pretty much know how to cook.
So you can take out what you don't want.
And if it sort of suggests, 3 times too much salt, you'll say, whoa, hold on, that's too much salt, right? It makes mistakes. It's also good at travel itineraries. I explain my children, their ages. I say, next month I'm coming back this is my 2nd trip in a month. I'm going to come back next 2 weeks from now to Delhi for the AI Summit, but I'm bringing my family. And so I describe to Gemini what I was using and say, here's my children's ages, here's what they're interested in, what are some things we should do, we're going to go to Agra and Delhi and so on. It's actually really good at that, much better than all those terrible travel clicky, too many ads, websites, spammy nonsense. So there are things that it is very useful for, and those are just two casual examples. But also, I think we think a lot about large language models because as consumers of information and people who are into words and all that, it's the most important to us right now. But the world of AI is much bigger. And I'm also very, very excited about two things. I'm excited about what's going on in biology. So AlphaFold, it's a real revolution in being able to treat rare diseases and things like this. It's really an amazing thing happening that's going to reduce a lot of suffering. And also driverless cars, I think is potentially amazing. I will say this, it's going to be a long time until a machine can drive in India. Because it's
not
it's
doing
crazy
so
out
well
there.
on the West Coast either.
No, yeah. Even in America where people, it's big wide roads and people tend to drive very straight and there's not all the honking and all that. It's not so good. So, but it's an exciting thing because if we think about the number of deaths and injuries from people just trying to live their lives and get around, it's going to be a fantastic thing. And so there's a lot to be excited about with computation and large, AI models and some dark sides.
Okay, I think we should give the audience a chance to participate in this conversation. If there's somebody with a mic here, I'll start right in the front because I can actually see you, the lady in the front. Yes.
Hello, Mr. Jimmy Wales. I'm 14 years old. I've come to see you talking, and my question is, I actually want your perspective on this topic. In his most recent book, Yuval Noah Harari wrote in Nexus that information is a type of connection, a representation of data. You could say that information is an oil for an engine called ideology. So what's your take on that? Do you have any other metaphor for information, or do you connect information with something more than this?
That's fantastic. See, I told you, the young generation is fine, 14 years old, and a very...
I was just going to say, I would not be able to construct this sentence when I was 14, for sure.
So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so I think, so I'm like many people, I would make a distinguish between information and knowledge and wisdom, and I think that's an important distinction. Information is just the raw data and a lot of all kinds of things. Knowledge, hopefully Wikipedia is approaching knowledge where it's been thought through and constructed carefully and thought about. And then wisdom, of course, comes much later, as you begin to understand many different ideas and you begin to be able to see strengths and weaknesses. I think most people, there's a great song lyric, that I remember hearing when I was young, we're only immortal for a limited time. And it's talking about when we're young, we feel immortal. But also, when we're young, we often can feel a bit omniscient. I used to know everything, and then I realized I didn't know everything. And so and then you talk about the connection and the social. I mean, one of the most important things about Wikipedia is that community and that dialogue and community. And actually, when it's working well, then people who don't agree about some topic still can be friends and still work together. That's the best way of getting to good Wikipedia articles. When it's working poorly, people just yell at each other, and that's not always helpful. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's a request. Could I please have your autograph?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Of course. We have to find a way to make that happen. It's going to be crowded.
We'll try and make sure it happens at the end of the session.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. Very good. I'm a tech policy researcher. So I've been interested on one particular issue, that is safe harbor. You also had a case in Delhi High Court recently where safe harbor was also in trouble. How do you think governments are looking at safe harbor and intermediate liabilities?
Okay, very good. I couldn't catch every word, but I got the general
Basically,
topic. So.
intermediary liabilities and safe harbor.
Yeah. So this is really important. So for Wikipedia, it's very important that the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the charity that operates Wikipedia, if we become responsible for everything everybody says on the platform, then we have to, basically, we can't function. We have to sort of pre-approve every comment, and we have to hire thousands of people to do it. It doesn't work. And so one of the problems that we're seeing right now is irresponsible and sort of toxic social media is driving a public demand for some kind of change, some kind of regulation. And where I say, and if you're a public policy researcher, you understand this fully, is actually we have to be very, very careful here. And what we have to think about is to say, okay, how do we preserve both the openness of the internet, the ability for, because it's a wonderful thing that everyone can participate in society and everyone can have a dialogue, but also eliminate some of the toxicity, stalking, like doxing people, all of these things. How do we find that right balance? And too often, legislators, they just feel a need to do something, and they just pick something and they start to do it, and not having really thought through it. So one of the things that we're saying when I talk to people who are thinking about policy is, we call it the Wikipedia rule. Like, if you're thinking about some regulation on social media, also think about, would this break Wikipedia? Because Wikipedia, most people agree, okay, Wikipedia, is it perfect? Of course, it's not perfect. But it's not the place where people are doing stalking, attacking, revenge porn, like horrible things like that.
But theoretically, there could be fake news on Wikipedia if enough people decided, for example, to go after a public person, and they organized themselves in the way trolls do, and they went and they kept editing something deliberately. So, what would Wikipedia do to counter that? So
I think the important thing there is to have a healthy community. If we have a community that's really committed to fact-seeking and so forth, then if you come and you try this, it's not going to last very long. Certainly, you know, there are actually fake news websites out there. And that's not, you know, Donald Trump calls everything he doesn't like fake news, but, you know, it's a legitimate phenomenon. That's had almost no impact on Wikipedia, because the Wikipedians spend their lives debating about quality of sources and so forth. And as I said earlier, like, we try to be neutral. We don't always get it right, but we have to be, you know. And so, because that process does work reasonably well, you wouldn't want to try to mess with that, because it's kind of one of the few things that actually works. And we know that one of the problems that social media platforms have is a centralized approach is not scalable. And so I don't think the Wikimedia Foundation could do a better job than the community. In fact, if we disempower our community, it's going to be really kind of very problematic. And so, yeah.
Okay, maybe someone this side, if anyone has a question. Okay, I'm going to go in the middle, the striped T-shirt. Yeah. Stand up, yeah.
My question comes along the lines of, you were talking about how Wikipedia has to maintain that there is no slant in the information. But nowadays, a lot of people use LLMs for their source of information, and they're trained with their primary directive to be useful to the user. And that often takes the shape of pandering to whatever the user wants. So instead, when the user asks, is so and so bad, the LLM often tries to pander and answer it in a positive light. Do you think that's bad? And given that a lot of organizations who make these models nowadays, they try to prevent that, do you think that it's going to stay like that? Or do you think that's going to change?
This is a fantastic question, and part of my answer is I don't know what they're going to do in the future, but you've identified something that is true. Like, I use large language models a fair amount, so I program as a hobby. I'm not a very good programmer, but I like making things, and it's sort of, I mess around and so forth. And then I have a bug in my code and I ask about it, and it's always so, that's a very insightful question. And I'm like, it's a very dumb question. I know you don't need to suck up to me like that, and so on. And it's the same about a lot. And a lot of people are complaining about this. A lot of people say it's so annoying that it's just always complimenting you and so forth, and trying to keep you longer. Like, I find it annoying at the bottom. It says, would you like me to also do this or also do that? And it's like, why are you trying to make me stay longer? Just answer me and I'm finished, and that's enough. And so I think that it's an interesting question, and I think we might see different, it's good that there's a competitive landscape. It's good that open source models exist and are becoming more powerful, because that will enable more competition, so that we can say, okay, actually, I don't want a model that's doing this. So one example, there's just been some news headlines, and it's too early to know because it's just been announced a little bit, that OpenAI is planning to start having advertising, okay? Well, this sounds like it could be a problem. I don't know, because when I say, I like to use a ChatGPT to ask for a travel itinerary, it's actually important to me that they are summarizing serious reviews and what people on Reddit said and so forth, and they're really getting maybe hopefully something like the truth of it, and that it's not quietly being influenced by a payment that was made to them. Then suddenly, because I'm talking about trust, my trust goes down a lot. And I also think, similar to what I was saying earlier about endorsements and bias in news sites, right? If every time it talks to me, it tells me what a genius I am, that doesn't make me feel better. It actually makes me think I don't trust you. Like if I did have...
It's slightly creepy, actually.
Yeah, it's slightly weird, and I wish it would stop doing that. And I've tried. You can sort of tell it, you know, and it's like, if you say, please, please don't overcompliment me, it'll say, I can see you're a very thoughtful person to not want too many compliments. I say, oh, okay.
All right. At the back.
Quick question for you is with people migrating to Perplexity and the other AI, ChatGPT and other AI tools, how do you see the community updating Wikipedia as an information source?
Right, yeah. So that's a really great
Interesting
question. It is
question,
something
yeah.
that we do think about. But so one of the things I would say about the Wikipedia community is it's our hobby. We enjoy doing it. We like writing Wikipedia. We do it because we meet other nerdy people and so forth. And it's kind of like we've got this great group of people and we're doing all this work. And then we look around and we're like, oh, wow, the whole world thinks this is wonderful. But that's not why we did it. And so on one level, we aren't like a social media platform. So a social media platform, if you said, oh, the traffic on Instagram is declining, do you think all the celebrities and influencers who are very popular there are going to abandon the platform? They might, because they're there for a commercial purpose, right? The Wikipedians are there because we enjoy it and it's our hobby. Now, having said that, what we do think about is if the traffic to Wikipedia collapsed, it would be hard to find new volunteers and new people to update the information. And that's going to be a problem for large language models.
But are
because
you
they need
thinking
us.
of reimagining it as technology moves so quickly? Are there any new ideas? What are you all thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, one of the examples, a very simple example, is if the search engine at Wikipedia, like inside Wikipedia, if you just search, if you ask a question, it doesn't understand anything. It's just a keyword search. And so you only get, like, hopefully it's lucky and you get the right article. But you can imagine, you could ask a question and then the AI would be able to say, oh, here's the exact quote from Wikipedia. Here's where you could find that. Right now, the community is very opposed, and I agree with them, to having any of the words that are presented to the public come directly from the AI because we don't trust it enough. But we could trust it to say, well, look, if it can generally at least find the right section and show you what the humans wrote, that might make the internal process more usable and more useful to people. That's one little thing. But also maybe there are tools that we can use to support the community to be more productive. So I mentioned machine translation, but there's other things like, like if we think about bias, for example, how about an AI that's constantly running on Wikipedia looking for articles that are different substantially from the sources, or looking for certain phrases that the community identifies as, this is very common in a biased entry. That's the kind of thing to make a suggestion to humans to go, oh, let's take a look. So it's great.
Okay, because we're almost out of time, I'm going to actually take 3 questions together quickly.
Do you think that easily accessible information is contributing to the increasing fright of anti-intellectualism?
Okay, I could barely hear that, but you said you were discouraged from using
Wikipedia because it was too easy.
So, all right. Okay, I'll just take 1 or 2 more questions together and Jimmy can answer them together.
Yeah.
Yes, there.
We started hearing the word AI in 2015. Later on 2020 or 2021, we started hearing generative AI. Now in 2025, it became deterministic AI. Now AI can do booking, manipulating, so many things. In late 2025, they have introduced a lot more things like MCP, A2A, agent-to-agent, multi-agent systems. So what if some multi-agent system started manipulating Wikipedia? How do we prevent it?
Okay.
Is there any guardrails?
Yeah.
Got the question. I'll take 1 more because time is up. Just 1 more. The lady here in the 2nd row, 3rd row. Stand up, I can see you. Yeah.
Last year, there was this mass movement about Wikipedia being shut down, and in support of it, what is the update on that? That's 1. And 2, we were talking about the disadvantages of AI. Environmental impact is there. Then there is plagiarism, exploitation of cultures. So all these put together, what are your thoughts on that? These 2.
Okay. That's declined a lot, discouraging students. I think what is now more common is explaining to students how to use Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, and so on. Saying it's too easy, I don't think that's ever a valid answer. Like, just because something's easy doesn't make it bad. I think, it's so, yeah, that. And then the next one?
The second question was a really technical question about how the language around AI has changed. I didn't fully understand that question.
Yeah, there was a piece at the end that I did want to answer, but I can't remember.
Manipulation. Yeah.
So if AI bots, like
Yes.
large language AI bots,
Start manipulating Wikipedia, yes.
try to pour a lot of content into Wikipedia, they would get blocked very quickly if they're going too fast and if they're obviously not a human. And right now, it's usually pretty easy to tell an AI writing. But I think that's something that we are going to see, we're going to grapple with in the future. I don't think it'll be possible that we'll all wake up one morning and in the middle of the night, an AI rewrote all of Wikipedia, because the community would just block that very, very quickly and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. Like if a human tried to upload 1,000 entries in one night, you would just get blocked because they would say, hold on, what are you doing? That's not okay. And then the last one was about...
there was some campaign to shut down Wikipedia, and what is the status on that?
So, with Wikipedia, because there is a massive amount of culture wars and things like this going on, there's always some noise somewhere. We are always trying to work to meet with governments, to explain what we're doing, to say we want to be the responsible party on the internet, and so on and so forth. We're blocked in China. That's a long-term issue. We were blocked for a while in Turkey, but we won in court there to not be blocked. And I think most governments around the world, even ones that you might think would block Wikipedia for various reasons, mostly, like the Russians don't block Wikipedia, even though it says things that the Russian government doesn't like, because it's so useful and it's sort of calm, that I think people don't want to block Wikipedia. But we, I think, part of it is we really like to emphasize our role in education and in bringing knowledge to everyone and our desire to be neutral. So if a government's mad because they think we're biased, this is, again, why I say, okay, sometimes we can't help you, right? Because if what you mean by that we're biased is just that we're not towing your party line completely, that we can help with. But in other cases, it's like, oh, okay, hold on. Actually, maybe we could do a better job here.
Okay, we're out of time, but since Wikipedia is all about community and sharing and community knowledge, Jimmy, is this your first time here in Kozhikode? Not your first time in Kerala, but your first time here?
First time in this book festival, yeah.
So where is the one place the community believes he should, or what's the one dish you think he has to eat before he goes back?
Oh.
Is it biryani? Is it overwhelmingly biryani? I need to hear you all say it.
This is
Which biryani? Chicken biryani? Beef biryani? Okay, let's hear in a chorus. Is it biryani? Can we hear biryani from the audience? Have you ever had a biryani?
I have, but not in Kerala.
So you've got the Kerala biryani is totally different.
Fantastic. That's really great.
Is that going to be dinner tonight?
Yeah. It is. It is.
Let's have a huge round
Thank
of
you.
applause for Jimmy Wales. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being a fantastic audience.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
thank you.
That was great.
Thank
Fantastic.